Rhaenyra's dynamic scenes with both Daemon and Alicent are captivating and skillfully acted by Darcy and Cook. King Aegon II Targaryen and Larry Strong's political machinations make for compelling viewing, reminiscent of Game of Thrones. The finale sets up Season 3 well, with high-quality production values and an epic score from Ramin Djawadi, but some franchise connections feel forced. House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 8 brings the show's sophomore outing to a close, with a finale that's often great, but also frustrating in parts. There's a lot to get through in the finale, which reunites Rhaenyra Targaryen with both Daemon Targaryen and Alicent Hightower, sees King Aegon II Targaryen smuggled out of King's Landing by Larry Strong, and multiple visions that portend a lot of doom. It has to wrap up some season-long arcs while also setting up House of the Dragon Season 3, and for the most part, it successfully does just that. Rhaenyra's scenes with Daemon and Alicent are fantastic. Rhaenyra Targaryen has already had brilliant scenes with both Daemon Targaryen and Alicent Hightower in Season 2. The former in Episode 2, the latter in Episode 3, and we're treated to one more of each in the finale. Emma Darcy is always superb, but when the leads of House of the Dragon's cast come together, there's real magic. I'll admit I'm a sucker for Rhaenyra and Daemon conversing in High Valyrian, and clearly writer Sarah Hess is too. So I love their reunion at Harrenhal where, finally, he repledges his allegiance and bends the knee. Once again, these scenes are so well played by Darcy and Matt Smith. They bounce off one another so well, and there's a real spark. It's fiery, and also a little funny. It serves to bring them back together and push their arcs forward as one, and these two together is something that's been sorely lacking in Season 2. The same can also be said for Darcy and Olivia Cook. What's really impressive, including in this conversation, is how they capture the versions of the characters they didn't even play. We feel their longing for a friendship that has long gone, the love that once existed turned to hate, and a hope that something still exists. There's a little petulance in Rhaenyra, like when she tells Alicent to go, but it also reverses their roles in a fantastic way. It is now Alicent, not Rhaenyra, who longs for freedom, who rebels against her duty. Rhaenyra, meanwhile, refuses to stray from the path she feels is ordained by the gods. I was a little wary of Alicent going to Dragonstone and how it might play out, in case it tried too hard to soften her edges or weaken her character. But I don't think it does that. It's clear where Alicent has gone wrong and why, but there's a real pathos, power, and tragedy to their encounter that I ended up loving. House of the Dragon Season 2's finale has multiple great character moments. House of the Dragon, like Game of Thrones before it, is built on character work, not epic battles or dragons flying across the sky. Those things are undeniably cool, and when done right, truly spectacular, but they need the character dynamics underpinning them for any of them to matter. And I'll almost always like it when we get a scene that's just 2 or 3 characters in a room with sharp dialogue and great actors playing off one another. We get several such scenes in the House of the Dragon Season 2 finale. King Aegon II Targaryen and Larry Strong have emerged as one of the best pairings in the entire show, and perhaps the one that most captures the brilliant political machinations of Game of Thrones. Both of these characters have done monstrous things, and yet the show has found a way to bring them together by their unified tragedies in a way that makes both more understandable without forgiving their previous sins. Similar is true for Sir Criston Cole in this episode, who gets to deliver a big speech about honor to Gwaine Hightower. Cole has long been the most loathsome guy even on Team Green, but there's a sorrow and an openness that's almost even earnest to Fabian Frankel's performance here that humanizes him a lot more than the show has done previously. Alan of Hull's conversation with Corlys Velaryon does something similar too. Similar to Jacaerys Velarion's outburst at Rhaenyra last week, it gives us a true understanding of what life was like growing up as a bastard, and given he didn't have any comforts, there's even more raw emotion to it. I'll admit I'd grown tired of seeing Alan and Corlys in the same setting having the same brief conversation week after week, But Alan finally cutting through the niceties makes it worthwhile. There are lots of other similar character moments that are excellent too, including a couple with Aemond and Helena Targaryen, which suggests that Ewan Mitchell and Fia Saban are an underused pairing. It doesn't all work, though. The Tyrion Lannister scenes with the Triarchy do have some humor and are a bit of fun, but given this is the finale and it's introducing new characters, I think there's probably too much of it, on balance, that could have gone elsewhere. One example would be Rhaena Targaryen, who has now had multiple similar scenes of her chasing the wild dragon in the Vale of Arryn. Her seeing the dragon at the very end was good, but spending more time with her in a way that truly expanded her character, or her sister Baela, who has also been rather overlooked, could have benefited not just this episode, but the season as a whole. Daemon's visions fall into a frustrating franchise trap to connect to Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon Season 2 saved Daemon's biggest vision for last, as he sees into the future of Westeros, including the Three-Eyed Raven, a White Walker, and Daenerys Targaryen. I can see why they included it, and how they try to connect it to Daemon's arc, and why he bends the knee to Rhaenyra. But I'd have preferred the show to avoid so directly connecting to Game of Thrones. So many prequels often fall into the trap of doing too much to set up the part of the franchise that comes after them. This was something House of the Dragon's timeline was set to avoid, since there's such a large gap until Game of Thrones. Even Aegon the Conqueror's Song of Ice and Fire Dream avoided it, as it was very much about how it affects the story at hand. This is doing that same thing in part, but because we actually see a White Walker and Daenerys, it's going a bit too far in linking them all together. Aegon's dream works as a motivation for Rhaenyra, fitting with her growing god complex and belief that she has a divine right to rule. It also carries a sense of tragic irony in that the prophecy Aegon used to unite the realm is currently destroying it, but then so overtly stretching that through to the Three-Eyed Raven, which also connects to the next Game of Thrones spin-off, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And then Dany is the kind of franchise servicing and overshadowing trick you'd expect from the MCU or Star Wars, and HBO should be wary of overdoing that. House of the Dragon Season 2 finale is a lot of setup for Season 3. There's no getting away from the fact that a lot of House of the Dragon Season 2's finale is setting up Season 3, which itself comes after a lot of the real war starts now promises following on from Season 1. That may well be frustrating to some viewers, especially as I have seen several nothing's happened complaints, though I think there are pros and cons to it. For the most part, I think this season has largely delivered, and so much of the setup for Season 3 is earned and works. After all, we get a payoff to Rhaenyra and Daemon's arc. It's concluded the Dragonseed's story, and a lot of power dynamics have shifted in King's Landing with Alicent's search for freedom, Aemon taking power, and King Aegon being forced to leave the city. At the same time, the montage that closes it out, accompanied by a truly epic score from Ramin Djawadi, does feel a little like a compromise, and that the show might have been better with a 10-episode season. Writer Sarah Hess told EW that it wasn't really their choice to have a truncated run, and I think you can feel a little bit of that in the finale. If this season were to conclude with, say, the Battle of the Gullet, it'd probably make more sense. House of the Dragon Season 3 has been confirmed by HBO. That isn't what we got, though, and it's worth remembering just a few episodes ago, we did get one of the most epic battle sequences in Game of Thrones history. Despite the problems, the setup for House of the Dragon Season 3 does feel exciting, even if there'll likely be another painful 2-year wait for it to pay off. Taking place about 172 years before the events of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon tells the tale of the rise of the Targaryens, the only family of dragon lords to survive the doom of Valyria. The popular HBO spin-off show first starred Millie Alcock and Emily Carey as Rhaenyra Targaryen and Alicent Hightower before they were replaced by Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook, who play the older versions of the characters. Also starring in the series is Matt Smith, Prince Daemon Targaryen, and Paddy Considine as Rhaenyra's father, King Viserys Targaryen.